What's going on, guys? Hope everything's going well. I sort of procrastinated on my work to watch Game of Thrones, which was a huge loss of life. And so I missed the deadline for today's video, and now it's Monday night at midnight, and we're gonna get through this. The topic for today's video is self-discipline, the Stoic concept of how to build self-discipline, and in particular, the ideas from Seneca, Ryan Holiday, Marcus Aurelius, and even Tim Ferriss, who is considered a modern-day Stoic. And so here are some ideas on Stoicism and self-discipline that I came across from the Stoics of ancient times as well as modern practitioners. I'd first come to the awareness of who Marcus Aurelius was through the movie Gladiator. Richard Harris had been one of my favorite actors for some time, and when I discovered the ideas and framework of thinking that Marcus Aurelius touted, I felt it was fitting that Harris was the man chosen to portray such a larger-than-life figure. And so the first principle that helped Aurelius and other Stoics build up their self-discipline was to make their goals the right degree of ambition. Make your goals the right size. Even for Stoics who touted detachment and maintaining a sense of equilibrium with both prosperity and obstacles, the starting point for determining what to apply self-discipline towards is goals, objectives, the things you actually are trying to pursue. In his book, The Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday says this: "Start thinking like a radical pragmatist, still ambitious, aggressive, and rooted in ideals, but also eminently practical and guided by the possible. Not on everything you would like to have, not on changing the world right at this moment, but ambitious enough to get everything you need. Don't think small, but make the distinction between the critical and the extra. Think progress, not perfection. Under this kind of force, obstacles break apart. They have no choice. Since you're going around them or making them irrelevant, there's nothing for them to resist." Tim Ferriss, in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, says something similar about setting goals with the right size, the right degree of ambition. He says this: "Unreasonable goals are easier to achieve for a number of reasons. Having an unusually large goal is an adrenaline infusion that provides the endurance to overcome the inevitable trials and tribulations that go along with any goals. Realistic goals, goals restricted to the average ambition level, are uninspiring and will only fuel you through the first or second problem, at which point you will throw in the towel. If the potential payoff is mediocre or average, so is your effort." At the same time, you don't want to set a goal that's so big that it's unbelievable to your subconscious and your superconscious mind, your personal sense of what is actually possible for you. In many of his books, Brian Tracy said that when he first wanted to increase his income, he was making $40,000 a year, and he had set an intention of making 10 times that amount, $400,000 a year. But that leap was so large, it was such a big increase in ambition and his output that it was unfathomable to him, and so he didn't make any progress in his career. It wasn't until he set a new goal of making $60,000, which was still a very impressive leap from his current salary, but much more achievable than what his mind could fathom with $400,000 a year, that he actually made progress. And in 6 months, he was making that higher level of money. He hit his goal. And so the lesson here is to perceive your reality, perceive what's possible for you, and yet set an intention that's large enough that it seems ambitious, exciting, and believable. Speaking of perception, the second principle is to first perceive. Perceive what your reality is, what your current situation is, and then work the process. This idea of working the process is very notable and commonly said in athletics. Saban, the head coach of the University of Alabama football team, perhaps the most dominant dynasty in the history of college football, doesn't focus on what every other coach focuses on, at least not in the way they do. Saban teaches the process. He says this: "Don't think about winning the SEC championship. Don't think about the national championship. Think about what you need to do in this drill, on this play, in this moment. That's the process. Let's think about what we can do today, the task at hand." Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, puts it another way. He says this: "Objective judgment, now at this very moment. Unselfish action, now at this very moment. Willing acceptance, now at this very moment, of all external things. That's all you need." When it comes to building self-discipline for the Stoics, it's not so much about gritting your teeth and chasing through whatever actions you are to take, although there is a degree of aggressiveness and bravado that the Stoics definitely embodied, but more so it was a relation to taking stock of what your objectives are, what's possible for you, and taking a perception of what reality is as it stands right now. having acceptance of both ends, what you're trying to pursue with a degree of detachment, and taking stock of current reality. When you can clearly perceive what your reality is right now as it stands and accept it, and you can locate what your objectives are, the things you would like to achieve that do stimulate you, that do excite you, while you can still carry a sense of detachment about them, then you can carry those actions that'll be a thread to that finish line. You can pursue the action that is in front of you, the best actions, the best intentions you can lay forth in the direction of those objectives, and the discipline begins to take care of itself. The third principle on how the Stoics embodied self-discipline I extracted from the works of Seneca, and it's this idea of considering the shortness of life and then acting out in day-tight compartments. Here's what Seneca says. It's not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough, and it has been given in sufficiently generous measure to allow the accomplishment of the very greatest of things if the whole of it is well invested. Once you daily consider the shortness of life, memento mori, the fact that we're all one day gonna die, act out in day-tight compartments. Then treat the whole of your life in a single day, and treat every day as if it is a brick that you're laying. This is an idea that I learned from Will Smith in one of his interviews. He said that his dad would tell him, when you're trying to build a great wall, don't set out to build that wall. Instead, focus on laying one brick perfectly, which is to live that one day that you have, the one day that you've been given, perfectly, as best you can. Lay that brick as best you can. This is also an idea that Dale Carnegie says in his book on how to stop worrying and start living. Live in day-tight compartments. Treat your whole life as if it belongs in only that one day, and just live that day out as best you can. If you put 100% of your energy in living in that one day and making that one day as excellently conducted as possible, then your future, theoretically, will be the best possible future because it'll have been created by the best intentions that you set for yourself. And so there's no need to worry. If you've set forth the best intentions, if you're doing today perfectly and you laid that best brick out every day, then the results will be the best they could have been. And just this notion of considering that life is short, our time needs to be well spent, and yet after considering that notion of memento mori, you live your life out in day-tight compartments, this helps inherently kick in a ton of self-discipline. And the final principle that I'll mention in this video is this idea of choosing work that is inherently tied to your nature. Ultimately, Stoicism asks us to embody the best of our nature, to be at one with what is our nature. And although their definition of that might be a little etheric and loosely determined compared to what we consider nature to be, what human nature to be, it's very inspired. And Marcus Aurelius has this amazing passage on doing work. The fact that animals, ants, bees, everyone is busy conducting themselves in their actual action. They're fulfilling their nature. And we as humans, we can only find happiness when we are doing our part as well, when we are acting out our work in accordance with nature. Aurelius says this: at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work. As a human being, what do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? But it's nicer here. So you were born to feel nice, instead of doing things and experiencing them? Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants and spiders and bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can, and you're not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? But we have to sleep sometime. Agreed. But nature set a limit on that, as it did on eating and drinking. And you're over the limit. You've had more than enough of that, but not of working. There you're still below the quota. You don't love yourself enough, or you'd love your nature too and what it demands of you. People who love what they do wear themselves down doing it. They even forget to wash or eat. Do you have less respect for your own nature than the engraver does for engraving, the dancer for dance, the miser for money, or the social climber for status? When they're really possessed by what they do, they'd rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts. Aurelius had this way of speaking that both motivates me and also makes me feel bad about myself. But it is entirely true. The best work that I've ever produced in my life has come from a work that my nature demanded of me. When you pursue work that your own inherent constitution, your own nature demands of you, the self-discipline kicks in automatically. And so these are the 4 principles that I extracted from my recent readings on Stoicism. The ideas of making your goals the right size, ambitious and yet rooted in reality, the notions of perceiving and then working your process. Instead of setting out to win a championship, instead you focus on what is the best laid plans, what is the best work I can do right now. Instead of worrying about the future, living in day-tight compartments, laying each day's brick as best you can, while keeping that awareness that life is incredibly short and time is of the essence. And lastly, doing work that your nature demands of you. For those of us who are willing to adhere or at least consider these principles, to us I say, greatness is coming. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon.